Welcome to part 4 of the country ride. Hello if you're the first time viewer. Welcome back all those who are still watching. I hope that you'll be as entertained and as interested in this video as you have been in the other videos. And I'll endeavour to talk about things that I hope you'll find interesting. At the end of the last video, I thought we were a bit closer to Tarago than we actually are. It'll be a good few minutes into this video before we actually get to Tarago. That's okay, we can just talk about other things and perhaps even just enjoy the silence for a while and not have me talking, and just enjoy the scenery and the ride. Just by way of explanation, the village, little settlement village I think is probably the best word for it, that we're coming to is called Tarago. It's spelled T-A-R-A-G-O. Sometimes it comes out Tarago. It's called a Tarago, same spelling, and I looked it up, and apparently the word Tarago is indigenous, from an indigenous language, and means country. I'm not sure how the Toyota People Mover fits into the term country, but nevertheless, that's what the word apparently means. This road we're on at the moment is called the Kalala Road. I was on Sandy Point Road, and last video I would have turned onto Kalala Road, and a little bit further down the track I will turn on to Lumley Road, and then make my way into Tarago. Now, this stage, you can see the country looks fairly open. I think it's the best way to describe it is a mix between open scrub and woodland, maybe mixed woodland. In other words, there are areas where there are trees and the trees are clumped together well, as you can probably see on the sides of the road at the moment in the distance, but other places where there aren't very many trees, and it seems to be sort of just open country. Now, some of it would be pastoral country, agricultural land that belongs to various farmers around here, and other of it, the rest of it would be just I guess crown land that has no usage at the moment. The road itself, as you can see, has markings down the middle. In some places there are markings on the shoulders, but the shoulders don't appear to be very well made. They're not uneven, but they're not necessarily the best places where you'd want to pull on the side of the road and put down the stand on your bike. Okay for cars to pull off the road, of course, because they've got more wheels contact the road and not have to lift off a stand as a bike would do. Just crossed something called the Kalala Causeway. A little bit disconcerting to come across something like that when you're riding, because you don't know the road, you're not expecting to come to that kind of thing in the first place, and if you don't know the road and you're not paying attention, you go through the water, it'll be a bit slippery. Fortunately, I had a sufficient warning, saw the sign, saw the causeway, realised I probably need to slow down a bit and maybe move around the water a little bit so that I didn't have any problems with traction and so on. We've just passed the intersection of what is the Kalala and now Lumley Road, and we're about 4 kilometres from Tarago. Just coming up on the right here, you'll see a sign, and you won't see it, but there is a sign pointing to the transfer station, which is what we apparently now used to call the rubbish tip or the dump. People who live in Tarago who have rubbish that's not necessarily collected by council in their garbage bins, I guess they take it there and it's sorted in some way or other, and then at a later stage collected by somebody and taken to the bigger transfer station with Goulburn Tip, Sinclair Street. Now, having said all that about transfer stations and rubbish and so on, brings me to a topic that I'd like to talk a bit about today, and that is to do with waste rubbish. Seems a bit odd for me to be talking about that when I'm out on a motorcycle ride, and you're wondering what that might have to do with motorcycling. Well, it has nothing to do with motorcycling, but it has everything to do with the little village of Tarago, which I'll explain in more detail when we get to Tarago. But We in Australia, and we in the world generally, I believe, have a problem with rubbish. We generate an awful lot of rubbish, and we have a problem with what to do with it. In the council area where I live, which is the Goulburn Mulwaree Council, and most other councils for that matter, the council provides you with 3 bins. One is a green lidded bin, and it is for garden waste and food waste. So it's called a FOGO, food and organic waste bin. And the idea is that you scrape your leftover food scraps, peelings of vegetables, the bones, those kind of things into this bin. You put your lawn clippings and your tree trimmings and all that sort of stuff in this bin. And the council collect it in Goulburn at least once a fortnight. They take it to somewhere, it's all shredded and mulched up and turned into compost, which interestingly, you can then buy back to the council to put on your garden if you wish. So you give them your rubbish for nothing, and they'll sell you your rubbish back, your green waste back as compost to put on your garden. So that's one bin. The second bin, as you probably know, is the yellow. And to go with that green FOGO bin, you have a caddy in your kitchen, so you can fill that up with food scraps and so on, and not have to go out to the main bin all the time. The second bin you have is a yellow one with a yellow lid, and it's for all those things that are marked with a recycling symbol. Now you need to be a little bit careful, because some things are marked as recyclable, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the council will take them. Some recycling depots are not able to recycle everything. For example, the Goulburn Recycling Depot does not take styrofoam because they don't have the capacity to recycle it, although it is recycled elsewhere. Just digressing, we've gone past the 50-kilometre sign to indicate that we're coming into a built-up area, and very shortly it'll come into the village of Tarago. So there's recycling. Then there's the one with the red lid, which is for everything else that ends up in landfill. That's the one you want to put least stuff in, because when it goes to the landfill, it goes to the tip and it stays there, and it stays there until it rots away or decomposes or whatever. Now, on top of that, the major supermarkets, two of the major supermarkets in Goulburn, that is Coles and Woolworths. I can't speak for Aldi because I don't know if they do that, but the other two have a scheme which I'll speak about in a moment. And we're just coming into the village of Tarago now. We're at an intersection where there's a 4-way stop. There's a stop sign. If you turn right, you go back to Goulburn. If you went left, you go to Braidwood. Go straight ahead, you'll go towards Bungendore, which is where we're going. There's a pub on the left-hand side there called the Loaded Dog, which is named after a poem by Henry Lawson. There's a school in Tarago, which I think has 2 or 3 teachers. There's a corner shop, which is directly across from the pub. There's a community hall. There are, a couple of hundred people maybe. And around this bend and a bit further along, you'll find there's a police station just after the roadworks here. There's a railway station, and there's quite a thriving little community here. The village has been here, I think, since about the 1840s, maybe 1850s. I'm not exactly sure. It does say on the sign when you come into the village when it was established. So just there you'll see the pedestrian bridge for the walking track. So, like I said, the 2 major supermarkets operate what they call a soft plastic recycling business. So what happens is, you think about the plastic wrap that comes around your meat, think about the foil packets that chips and snacks and things like that come in, and think about any sort of plastic that you can squash up, and that can be returned to Woolworths or Coles, and then they ship it off somewhere. And I don't know exactly what happens to it after that, but they have a process where they take that stuff back. One stage it used to go to China and Indonesia and be burnt. I don't know what happens to it now, because I think the Chinese at one stage jacked up and said, no, we're not taking any more of your rubbish. But nevertheless, you have this ability to recycle your soft plastics as well. Now, on top of that, of course, e-waste, like computers, tablets, televisions, so on, the retailer who sells you that is obliged to take it back when it's reached its use-by date for recycling. So if you buy a new TV from Harvey Norman and your old TV's dead, they're supposed to take the old TV back. They might charge you a small fee to take it, but if you take it into them, they should just accept it from you. Your laptop's dead and you buy a new one, they take the old one and send it somewhere where it's recycled. Legend has it that it goes to China. They have a method of extracting the oil from the plastic Whether that's true or not, I don't know. They extract the precious metals, they grind up all the plastic and it becomes road fill or more plastic in terms of things like outdoor furniture, park benches, that kind of thing. And of course, you can recycle your mobile phone by taking it to any of the phone companies, Telstra, Optus, whatever, dropping it in the receptacle there. They also send those things off to China where some sort of magic happens to them. Now, there is a point to all of this, which I'm getting to in a moment, and that is that just out of Tarago, we're going to come to something called the intermodal bioreactor. Now, that's a fancy name for something, and what it means is that once upon a time there used to be a mine at Tarago. It was operated by a company called Woodlawn. Then the mine closed. I'm not sure whether the mine closed because whatever it was they mined was no longer there. In other words, they dug it all up, or it was no longer economical to dig it out of the ground, or whatever the reason was, but the mine closed. And somebody else took over the mine. I think it was Viola, who are in paper and recycling and so on. They had a clever idea that what they would do is they would buy what's called protrusible waste. And we're just coming up to that intermodal thing now on the left-hand side. If you were a fan of the TV show The Sopranos, you know that Tony Soprano was in the business of, allegedly, protrusible waste. Protrusible is a fancy word for waste that decomposes and rots. So what happens is, this company, I think it's Viola, but I'm willing to be corrected if that's not right, buy protrusible waste from Sydney. They ship it down to this intermodal at Tarago by train. Then they move it from train onto a truck, and from the truck they move it to the old mine at Bungendore, where it sits in a hole and it decomposes. When it decomposes, the company have a method of extracting the methane, whichever way you say it, from the decomposing material and turning that methane, using that methane to generate electricity. All of that sounds fine and dandy, and we might hear an argument for saying, well, that is a way of generating green or renewable electricity. It's a way of generating green electricity, and perhaps it is. People who live out at Tarago say that sometimes in the summertime the smell from this place is unbearable. You can imagine it would be if nothing but rotting garbage. The rotting garbage is right on your back doorstep. There's an argument for saying, and that if this idea of generating electricity from waste and from protrusible waste is such a good idea, why is it necessary to transport the protrusible waste 200 kilometres from the source? At the moment, there's a proposal before the Goulburn Mulwaree Council for a second process similar to this to be opened with an incinerator in Bungendore, which is right on the edge of a national park, mind you, to be able to burn rubbish and generate electricity from it. Now, the council have rejected that application and made the argument quite reasonably, I feel, to say that, all right, if it's a good idea to do this thing and to burn rubbish to create electricity, why isn't the rubbish burnt closer to its source? Why is it necessary to bring the rubbish 200 kilometres south from the source where the rubbish is generated? So getting back to my original discussion about the 3 bins that you have and so on, is that we all need to do our bit to reduce the amount of rubbish we generate. We need to think about the things that we buy in the first place, how much packaging comes with those things that we buy. In some countries, the laws now say the company that generates or creates the packaging must take it back. So if you go into a supermarket and you buy a whole bunch of stuff, the supermarket has to take back the packaging that comes in. In some countries, and in fact, I think in most places around the world now, almost all parts of a car are fully recyclable. Whether that happens or not is another matter, but it's possible to almost completely recycle a car when it's reached its use-by date. But so the first thing is we need to perhaps think about the things that we buy. I can remember decades ago when you went to buy a shirt for a man's shirt, it came in a cardboard box with a clear plastic cover over it. Then the shirt had another bit of plastic around where the top button went, and another bit of cardboard around the collar to keep it stiff, and a cardboard back and some pins to hold the shirt to the cardboard back so it looked nice in the box. Nowadays, mostly if you go to buy a shirt, it's on a hanger. The person in the shop takes it off the hanger and just gives you the shirt. Your purchase of the shirt is not in any way diminished by the fact that it now comes that way rather than the other way, but a considerably amount of waste is now reduced by not doing those things. So we need to all think about, well, what is it I buy? What waste do I generate? What rubbish do I generate? Do I sort my garbage properly according to the instructions? Do I just all throw it in the red bin and let it go to the tip? There is a bit of an issue that if you put things in the recycling bin that are not recyclable, then the whole load could be wasted. So check what you're putting in the recycling bin and make sure it has a recyclable symbol on it, and then make sure it's recyclable in your area. If your council doesn't take a certain thing, then you are unfortunately forced to put it in the normal garbage. If you're not sure, ring the local council and ask them, do they take this or that? Those little plastic styrofoam type trays that sometimes meat comes on in the supermarket, they're marked recyclable, but I'm not sure if our council in Goulburn Mulwaree take them, whether their recycling unit has the capacity to deal with those, or their recycling agent has the capacity to deal with them. On the same subject, I forgot to mention this earlier, but also in Goulburn and in New South Wales, we have this return and earn business for drink containers. If you buy drinks, soft drinks, and even beer now, I'm not sure about wine, but certainly soft drinks and beer, if you buy those sort of drinks, you pay 10 cents per drink more. But then if you take the cans back to the bottles or whatever they are, back to the return and earn centre, you get the 10 cents back. You get that in the form of a voucher which you can spend at Woolworths. You get if you have a PayPal account, you can have that money credited to your PayPal account, or you can donate it to a charity. Whenever I go out there, I always see people who've got loads of, sometimes trailer loads of plastic drink bottles and beer cans and so on. So either they do a lot of drinking or they collect a lot of other people's drink containers. But that's another way of, we're not necessarily reducing your waste, but making sure your waste goes to the right place. All right, well, thanks everyone for watching and listening, and I hope I've stimulated you to think a little bit about your garbage while you've been enjoying the countryside. This video is almost at an end, so I'll say goodbye now and thank you for watching, and I'll see you and talk to you again in the next video.